What's up, everyone? Shane here from Casters of Horror, and I decided I wanted to start doing a sort of monthly wrap up for all the films or anything else horror related that had consumed the previous month. So I'm going to be looking at the stuff that I watched or played or whatever during May of 2023, and this is not including the films that we reviewed for the channel. And last month, those films were Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, Renfield, Scream 6, and Oregon Trail. I managed to watch a few more movies in addition to those, and I've got some other things to talk about, so let's jump right in. So the first film I watched was Resolution, the 2012 film from Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. Now, I had seen The Endless, which is actually a film that takes place in the same universe as Resolution, but it was one of their later films. And I thought I had actually seen Resolution, but I don't know. I decided to watch it again and then realized, oh, wait, I've never seen this. I don't know. But the characters from Resolution actually do appear in The Endless. So I don't know if I just got confused and, messed that up or whatever. I don't know. But I did get a chance to watch Resolution. And, it's pretty low budget. This is clearly one of their earliest efforts. But the story is pretty good. It follows these two guys, Michael and his friend Chris. Chris. And Chris is a bit of a druggie, right? He's got some problems, and he's staying out like in the middle of nowhere in this like cabin in the woods type thing, basically, right? And Michael goes, and I think Michael gets like a videotape from him or something. Videotape. That's that's where we're at. Um, but basically, Michael goes out there and decides to try to help him to convince him to come back, and he sees that Chris is pretty messed up, and he ends up basically handcuffing him to this pipe on the wall, and is like, "You're gonna get clean, whether you want to or not, and you're gonna stay here for 7 days until you're out of this." All right, and of course, Chris is all pissed about this and all that, but they get into it back and forth a little bit, but some weird things start to happen. Michael goes out and he starts. Meets a few people in the area. He meets these members of what is basically this local cult, and this cult is the one that's actually featured prominently in the movie The Endless. Right, so you've got some ties between these movies here, but it's one of those things where you don't actually have to see this movie to watch The Endless. It's just you kind of get some like a few like extras if you do, basically. But anyway, Michael is encountering all these people. They find out that this cabin that Chris has been staying in is somewhere he's not really supposed to be. It's part of this reservation. It's owned by this local tribe, and they find out that there was some French students there that were studying something, and they end up finding someone else who basically says that there's something out here, right? It's not haunted, but there's some sort of thing living out here. And throughout the film, you see almost like these film glitches that happen, and like just right in the middle of the action. And what's more is the characters, especially Michael, actually notices these. He's like, whoa, what was that? What's going on? And it comes about where basically they end up having to fend off these other like drug dealers, and then these the owners of the property and all that. And yeah, don't worry, I'm not going to give the whole thing away, but basically they end up seeing that like these sort of weird things are happening. They end up finding all these like photographs and film reels with things that seems like they may have happened at the cabin, but also seems like maybe they couldn't have happened. And they end up finding even footage of themselves, and so it's things just get weird, right? And if you've already seen The Endless, there is something out there. It's some sort of entity, and but you don't really. It's one of those things where you don't really get a ton of information. You have to fill in a lot of the blanks yourself. But that's cool. I like that. And yeah, I don't know if you are good with the sort of thing that maybe all the answers aren't presented out there, and you are left with uncertainty. I like that sort of thing. It kind of delves into the cosmic horror realm that I like. And yeah, Resolution is a pretty solid effort from these two filmmakers. they have actually quickly become some of my favorite filmmakers just for making these sort of, smaller sort of like niche titles. But yeah, I'm looking forward. I've never actually watched there is a third movie in this series, and again, they're pretty loosely connected, so I don't think it's something where you have to watch them in order or anything. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what else these two guys have got coming down the pipeline, because so far what I have watched of their films, I've really enjoyed. The next film that I watched was called The Deep House. And this was directed by Alexandre Bustillo and Julian Maury, and was also written by those two and a couple of others. And this is one of the more interesting movies I've seen. So it is a haunted house film, but it's not like a typical one. So this is about a young couple, Ben and Tina. They are YouTubers. They're your typical like some sort of like a cross between your ghost hunting YouTubers and your like urban explorer type YouTuber. Right? Those are the kind of videos that they put out there. And Tina is just kind of in it for the exploration, right? She just enjoys the historical aspects of what they're doing. But Ben is chasing that CLS, right? Click like and subscribe. And yeah, you should do that too. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, Ben is really chasing for that one thing that'll get them their million views, right? Well, they end up going to this lake where they hear that like maybe there's some hauntings at this lake or something, but it ends up being really busy, and they end up finding their way. They find a guy who says, "Hey, I can take you to a house that is completely submerged," right? And it's still on that lake that they visit, but it's in a different area. So they follow this guy and they go, and they get all their gear on, and the guy's acting like a bit of a creeper toward Tina, so I don't know, you kind of get the sense that there's something going on with him. But so they get all their diving gear on, and they've got this really cool like underwater like rover, so to speak. But then here's where things get interesting, because from this point on, the entire movie takes place underwater, right? And all the audio is like filtered through their comm links, right? That they're talking to each other through, and they are basically swimming for the entire rest of the movie. And they get down here, and sure enough, there is a full standing house at the bottom of this lake. And when they get in there, they find that despite the fact that this house has been submerged for quite a long time, that the house and everything in it is almost perfectly preserved, right? And then you start kind of seeing things, you kind of start hearing things. There are things going on in the background just off camera, or one of the characters will kind of catch glimpses of something. And there are little subtle things in this movie where, like maybe they don't point it out specifically, but you can kind of see, especially if you're used to haunted house movies, then you're kind of going to know what to look for. In that sense, it's not so different from your typical haunted house flick. But again, this whole thing takes place completely underwater. And so aside from that aesthetic, there's also almost this like claustrophobic feeling that the film, gives you because this it's just, they are stuck. You're stuck under there, right? And they end up finding that, maybe there was something else in the house. There's evidence that something might have been trying to escape, or maybe there was something else that seemed to have been blocked off. And you get a little bit as the film gets into it. I think one of the characters has some sort of like vision that explains pretty much what was going on, what caused this whole thing to happen. But yeah, this is a haunted house flick, and there are things that they discover. There's a reason that the house is very, very much intact, and it's not natural. Let's just put it that way. This was a really fun one. I really liked this. I say fun in the sense that it was just so unique. It's not like, oh, yay, fun. But it was, it was just so different. I've never seen anything like this, and just the whole idea of setting the entire thing, almost the entire thing underwater, and the entirety of once they actually get into the house, it's just really cool, And some of the basically all the camera angles are either from the cameras on their visors. They're like GoPros, or from this like underwater drone that they have with them, right? And so that's all the footage you get. And so yeah, it was just a really fun, unique experience. This one is from 2021, so it's just a couple of years old, and I think here in the States anyway, because it's a French film, but it is in English, right? There's some French in the film, but I think around in the U.S. it ended up on one of like the premium like subscription networks or something like that. But yeah, this was a good one. It's called The Deep House, and I really enjoyed this one. It was different, and I highly recommend watching it. So the next film I watched was called Meander, and now this one is a French film. It is completely spoken in French, so it has subtitles. You're gonna have to read this one. But when I watched it, oh, and this is a 2020 film from director Matthew Turi. I probably butchered that name. I don't know, but with this one, so not too long ago on the channel we reviewed the movie Cube, the Japanese remake. Oh hi, I've got a cat here talking to them, talking about movies with me. And Chris at that time when he watched it, and I was always a huge fan of the Cube movies, right? And Chris was like, the concept was there, but it was just so boring. And I'm not going to disagree with that. I felt like I even said that even as someone who liked the film and who likes those films, I think it was one of those things where they just didn't go far enough. They had so many options with traps and all that, and then they just really didn't do much with it. I feel like Meander did. Okay, so Meander is about a woman who, at the start of the film, she's kind of wakes up in the middle of the road, and it's not really clear, what exactly is going on. She seems to be quite distraught. Her name is Lisa, and someone basically pulls up in a car beside her, and he introduces himself as Adam, and they they get to talking a little bit, and then on the radio, she hears about I think like a serial killer basically, and then the description is exactly this guy who has picked her up, right? And so they they basically get into or I think I can't remember if they get into an accident or whatever. They end up outside the vehicle, and Lisa wakes up in a small room. And so it seems to be like it's setting itself up as one of those things where I was like, oh, okay, he's kidnapped her. And it doesn't really seem to be that that's what actually happened. She wakes up in this room, and then she kind of finds these really, really cramped tunnels, and she starts crawling through them. She's got some sort of thing attached to her wrist, right? And this like almost like a watch thing starts counting down. She can't get it off. Starts counting down, and she's crawling through this tunnel. She ends up finding this sort of this little alcove, right? And she's able to rush into the alcove real quick, and this barrier comes down, and basically, I think this is the one where it like torches the whole rest of the thing of the little tunnel that she's crawling through, right? And so then she basically has to find her way through these really, really cramped tunnels, and she encounters who she ends up finding out is the guy who picked her up, right? And so he was taken to, and basically it's sort of like a cat and mouse thing. Yeah, you don't really know where she is, how she actually got there, but turns out that these halls full of various different kinds of traps. A lot of times, maybe it's one of those things where only one person is going to be able to escape them, right? So there's a lot of back and forth between these two, and yeah, eventually you kind of get to this point where it seems like there's something else something, not necessarily someone, but something has brought her and has brought other people into this whole thing. And I feel like I said, that this movie does what maybe Cube didn't, in that it really plays up the traps. It seems quite a bit, I wouldn't say a lot more brutal, but there is definitely some brutality to the way some of these traps are organized, and it forces the people who are stuck in here to try to overcome obstacles, to get through them. But it also feels like there's actually more going on. Lisa is mourning the death of her daughter, and that actually comes up a bit later. And so I feel like whatever this is, if it's, some otherworldly thing or whatever, there's a deeper story here. And I really liked that, because I felt like the new Cube remake tried to do that, but this one actually pulls it off. And you kind of left wondering, like, is this something that's actually happening, or is it deeper? Is it some sort of like metaphor for something, or it's both, right? She's actually experiencing this, but there is something deeper than, just she's mourning her child. And so yeah, I really like this one. I thought this was a great film. I would definitely recommend watching it. But again, I will say, I mentioned claustrophobia in the previous movie. This one definitely has it, because uh, these little tunnels that she's crawling through, they are very cramped. So if that sort of thing creeps you out, just be aware it's prevalent. But yeah, that's Meander. I really liked it, and I'm interested in checking out more of what this writer and director has done or will be doing in the future. So the last movie I watched was a 1982 film, so going way back, and this one was called Forbidden World. Now, I had no idea what this was. I don't even know how how I came to know about it. I think someone on Twitter mentioned that it was on streaming, and so I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't know, I'll check it out, right? And this is a weird one. Okay, so at the very beginning, it's almost like this. It's something that's totally disconnected from the rest of the movie. It seems like a cheap Star Wars knockoff, right? And then the beginning, is with this sort of like a space pilot and his robot buddy, and they're fighting off. Get laser blasters, fighting off some sort of alien menace in their spaceships. Kind of weird. Then I ended up finding out after doing some research that that was actually filmed separately, and the director was given this task to film something like that, and if the producer, who I'll get to in a minute, liked it, then he would give the director a full film, and that's what ended up happening, right? So this movie, I start watching it, and I should mention that during that opening sequence, there's these weird flashes of like other things that seem totally disconnected. There's some flashes of nudity in there, and I'm like, what? Okay, whatever. Uh, so this is a movie produced by Roger Corman. Now, if you're not familiar with that name, I'm surprised. We're talking like the Slumber Party Massacre guy, right? And I've heard it described that like there are three things that Roger Corman demands are in every movie, and that's butts, boobs, and blood. And yeah, right. That's what's going on here. This movie goes from being a cheap Star Wars knockoff to basically a cheap Alien knockoff. Um, I remember thinking like this is just like um, a sexy or a smutty Alien ripoff. And then again, after doing some research, I ended up finding out that one of the crew members during filming actually said something similar to that. Is this just like just like a smutty Alien ripoff or whatever? And they're like, yeah, that's exactly what this is. So yeah, this is a this is a Roger Corman film, right? Um, Not a lot of substance, but a whole lot of a lot of flashing. Um, but it basically tells the story of this guy who um, he is I don't know how you put it, like a cleaner, so to speak. And he not like a mop and stuff, but he cleans up um, problems. He's a military officer, right? Um, he's called to this like space station or whatever. They are doing experiments on various animals, right? They're trying to create something. I think that I think it's that they're trying to create like an endless supply of food source or something like that. I don't remember. They end up, playing God, so to speak, on this critter, and it mutates and evolves, and it's basically has, I mean, utterly destroyed all the other animal test subjects, right? And so it's basically his job to try to figure out how to stop this thing that just keeps rapidly evolving. And I won't get into like how it ends up happening. You do get some backstory on how it happened. Of course, this is an alien ripoff, and so this thing continues to evolve and continues to take every human out, one by one, little by little. And in between, there's some pretty gratuitous nudity, just again because it's a Roger Corman film. That there's no actual reason for it. There's no story purpose for it in the film, but whatever. Again, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying if you watch this film, be prepared for what it is. It's a smutty alien ripoff. The thing is, though, the whole time I'm watching, like, this is the stupidest movie I've ever seen. And yet, I'm like, but I want to know what happens. I mean, okay, it held my attention, so I'll give it that. This 40-year-old movie that I'd never even heard of, but yeah, that was Forbidden World, and it's on streaming, so I mean, why not? If you're looking for a cheap, sexy-ish, I guess, alien knockoff, then check out Forbidden World. If you know Roger Corman, then you know what you're getting into. And finally, I want to wrap things up a little bit differently. So, if you've been watching the show long enough, you can see that behind me, I've got my huge board game collection. Right over here, I've got right there, I've got a game called The Night Cage. And I finally got a little bit of time to actually sit down. I had tinkered with this game a bit, but I finally got a chance to sit down and kind of like really dive into it. And so I just wanted to give this one a bit of a shout out real quick. And that is, The Night Cage is a cooperative game for 1 to 5 players, and the basic idea is everyone wakes up. You basically find yourselves trapped in this labyrinth, right? And you are thematically you have these candles, okay, and the labyrinth is dark, and the only thing you can see is your immediate location and the locations that are orthogonally adjacent to you, right? So just right here. And the whole idea is you have to sort of like sneak through these passages, and everyone is trying to find a key. Every player that's playing has to find a key, and then everyone has to meet up at the same exit. Okay? The problem is that the candles only illuminate those immediate positions around you. And if you leave an area, then should you try to turn around and go back, you can do that, but the passage will have changed. All right. So this is definitely some sort of like supernatural labyrinth thing. And in addition to that, in addition to just trying to find your way through, there are various monsters that will attack you in various ways, right? So you got to try to avoid them. If your candle goes out, then you'll only be able to see the immediate tile you're on, and that can cause a whole lot of problems. And the whole game is presented as these tiles that you pull out to lay down as the passageways. They're actually presented in this like candlestick, right? And so you pull those out, and so thematically, as you're pulling out tiles, your candles are diminishing. And once your candles are completely out, you have basically one last chance to try to get to the exit before the whole labyrinth just envelops you. This is a pretty fun game. I would kind of like to play it. What I kind of want to do is play it in the dark and maybe get some LED lights instead of the little like wooden meeples, right? I kind of want to get some LED lights and use those to move around on the game board with. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's one of those things where if you are playing with fewer than 4 people, then you still actually play with four characters, right? So you have these four characters moving around, and you kind of have to balance this thing. Do we want to split up, but then go through the wax of the candle more quickly, or do we want to try to stick together? But doing that, you run the risk of not being able to find what you need and being attacked by monsters more easily. So yeah, this is a really fun game if you're looking for a sort of horror themed but not overtly scary. Then yeah, I think this is a good one. It's called The Night Cage, and it's from Smirk and Laughter Games, designed by Christopher Ryan Chan, Chris McMahon, and Roswell Saunders. So this is one worth checking out. Finally, I'm getting around to getting through some of these horror games that I've got, and so yeah, probably be seeing more of my reviews, coming up here soon. But anyway, that's all I got for this month. That is what I watched or played through for the month of May. I'll be trying to do one of these, I think, once a month to just kind of catch up on things that I've been able to do, horror media that I've been able to consume, aside from the 4 or 5 movies that we review for the podcast. So, anyway, that's what I've got. Let me know in the comments if you have any recommendations for me, movies, books, games, whatever, anything horror related. I'm interested. And while you're down there, make sure you hit like and subscribe so you can see more in the future. All right. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next month.